Hi, everybody, and welcome back to MTRA Bedtime Stories. It's such a lovely early evening. I'm going to sit outside and listen to the birds chirp. They're singing away tonight. Well, Little Bub is gone. So let's see how poor Joel is carrying on and what happens next. Chapter 8 is called The Pulling Bee. In the weeks that followed, it was hard for Joel to pay attention to his work. He kept seeing Little Bub in the back of his mind, seeing him go lickety-split after the hound dog, or just capering for the fun of it. And in the sound of the millweed, he kept hearing the high, bulging neigh, and often, with no one was looking, he would sniff his jacket to smell the very essence of Little Bub. In whatever Joel was doing, gathering stones for fences, wielding a mattock on stumps in the highway, working inside or outside, the little horse nudged into his thoughts. One day, when Joel was up inside the chimney sweep, sweeping away the soot, his ears picked out 3 names from the talk going on in the room below: Ezra Fisk, Robert Evans, Justin Morgan. Precariously, his fingers clung to the bricks like a bird. If he made the least noise, or if his bare feet slid into view, the talk might stop or take a different new tack altogether. His toes found a narrow ledge of brick and caught a foothold. His whole body tensed with listening. "Yep," a voice was saying. "The schoolmaster's little horse is turning out to be a crack. Puller, already he's made a nice clearing of about 5 acres. Another voice said, "So the little horse can pull, hey?" "Yep," the first voice replied. "Evans brags that the critter can jerk a log right out of its bark." A loud guff greeted the remark. In the dark of the chimney, Joel smiled in pride. But what if the smile faded and worry crept in? What if Evans was working Little Bub too hard? What if he became sway-backed and old before his time? Joel had to know. Quickly, he slid down the chimney and dropped to the hearth. But he was too late. He saw all the whisk of a cottontail and the door to the public room swinging shut, and at the same time Mistress Chase coming at him with a broken lock to be mended. As the days went by, Joel heard more and more about Little Bub's labors, and his worry sharpened. At last he talked things over with Miller Chase. "Why, work don't hurt horses," Miller Chase said reassuringly. "It's the other way around. Idleness is what really hurts them. Their muscles get soft and their lungs get small, and they can't even run without wheezing." So Joel's mind was at ease. By the time spring came on, Joel and Miller were the best of friends. In the late afternoon, while Mistress Chase napped, he often waved Joel away with a smile. "Be off with you now. Have a mite of fun," he would say. Joel took delight in these free afternoon hours. At this time of day at Chase's mill was the liveliest spot on the White River. Farmers would congregate to chat as they waited for the big saw to cut their logs. And often they tested the strength of their horses with log pulling contests. Surely, Joel thought, Little Bub must show up some day. It was on a late afternoon in April when the hopes were realized. The mill stream had grown swollen with spring rains, and Mr. Chase had taken on a helper to keep the mill sawing logs both night and day. On this afternoon, when the yard was crowded with farmers, the miller called to Joel, "See the man studying that there pine log? That's Nathan Nye. And if Nathan Nye's about, acting mighty important and bossy, you can be expecting most anything to happen. He was ever good at fixing pulling contests." Joel watched the jerky-legged man hop from one group to another like a puppet on a string. "If I was a boy now with no chores to do," the miller smiled, "it seems like I'd schedule right out of here and be in the center of things." In no time at all, Joel was helping Mr. Nye wrap tug chains about the huge pine log. A big dappled mare stood waiting to have the chains hooked to her harness. The mare's owner, Abel Hopper from Buttonwood Flats, was too busy bragging to be of any help. "A mighty lucky thing I'm first," he was saying. "Big Lucy and me, we'll pull this here piece of kindlin' into the logway in one pull. Then y'all can hyper on home after Lenten time. Abel Hopper had to eat his words. Big Lucy tried hard. She dug her 4 feet into the earth. She tugged and tugged, but the log barely trembled. Even when he poked her with the prodding stick, she only looked around as if to tell him it was useless. One after the other, the workhorses had their turn, yet no matter how the whips cracked or masters yelled, the log seemed rooted to the earth. Nathan Nye made a megaphone of his hands. "Folks," he shouted, "guess it's too hefty for a horse. You men with oxen can have a try now." Just then a bearded farmer came riding up on a chunky young stallion. Joel's heart missed a beat. Could this be Little Bub? This unkempt, mud-coated horse? Why, small he was. He looked to be 6 or even a 7-year-old. Then Joel grinned as the little stallion let out a high bugle and a rumbling snort. "Wait," called the big man astride the little horse. "Here's a critter wants to try." A smile, half scorn, half amusement, crossed Nathan Nye's face. "Evans," he said, "you're crazy. And if he burnt your shirt, look at Big Lucy. She's still blowing from the try. And Biggie's Belgian. His muscles are still a-hitchin' and a-twitchin'. Even Wiggins' beast failed. Can't none of 'em budge that log." "None except my one-horse team," growled Evans. Fear caught at Joel as a silence fell upon the crowd. And then came the rain of words mingling with laughter. "That little sample of a horse? Why, his tail is as long as a kite's. Yeah, he's liable to get all tangled up and break a leg." "Morgan's horse," Evans said slowly, "ain't exactly what you'd call a drafter. But whatever he's hitched to generally has to come." Joel heard the sharp voice of Mistress Chase, calling, "Boy, you come here." "Oh, rats," he murmured under his breath. On the way to the inn, she stopped long enough to put his cheek against Little Bub's. "I'll be back," he whispered. "I'll be right back." Mistress Chase met him just inside the door with a kettle of hasty pudding. "Hang the kettle over the fire," she commanded, "and stir until I tell you to quit." He hung the kettle on the crane and set it to work. "Hasty pudding," Joel cried to himself. "It beats me how it got its name. Nothing quick about this." Suddenly he heard the clump of boots and looked around to see Evans, followed by a little company of men, strut into the inn. "Madam Innkeeper," Evans called, "I'm wagering a barrel of cider that my horse can move the pine log. But now pour me a mugful. I'm dying of thirst." Joel was stirring so vigorously he almost upset the pudding. Mistress Chase let out a shriek. "Boy, mind what you're doing. Hasty's pudding is not meant to feed the fire." For once he paid no heed. He tore across the room and grabbed Mr. Evans by the sleeve. "Sir," he cried, "Little Bub's been working hard all day. Please don't ask him to pull that big log." Evans gulped his drink. "Go away," he snapped in annoyance. "When I want advice, I'll not ask it of a whippersnapper. I know what that horse." He stomped out of doors, and others joking and laughing behind him. While Joel stirred the pudding, he kept looking out the window. He could see Little Bub nibbling all the fresh green shoots within his range, and he could see the men sizing him up, feeling of his legs, then making their wagers. One by one, the stars dusted the sky. Nathan Nye brought out a lantern so that Evans could see to fasten the tug chains to the log. I've just got to go out there now," Joe pleaded. "Ma'am, if you please, could I?" Mistress Chase nodded. "You're stirring so strong the hasty pudding's heaving like a sea. Go on, get out before you upset it." "Oh, thanks, ma'am," Joel murmured as he bolted for the door, vaulted over a barrel of cider, and ran to the mill where Evans was stepping off 10 rods. "Aye, fellers," he was saying, "Bub can do it in 2 pulls." He turned around, almost stumbling over the boy. "A nettle ain't half as pesky as you," he growled. "Out of my way, or I'll clout you." Nathan Nye shouted to Evans, "Maybe you ought to listen to the lad. Want to give up afore you start?" "No such thing. Why, I'm actually ashamed to ask Morgan's horse to pull a splinter like this. Now, if you'll find me 3 stout men to sit astride the log, why, then I'll ask him." Joel ran to Little Bub. "Oh, my poor little fella," he choked. "None of the big critters could do it. And now with 3 men besides. Oh, Bub, Bub. Laughter was ringing up and down the valley. Ho, 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 that pint-sized cod to pull such a big log. Ho, ho. Nathan and I had no trouble at all in finding 3 brawny volunteers. As the men straddled the log, they joked and laughed and poked one another in the ribs. Look to your feet, men, warned Evans. This horse means business. Something's got to give. Nye held the lantern aloft. It lighted the huddle of faces. They were tense with excitement. Some of the men were placing last-minute bets. Some of the men were placing more bets. Some were chewing madly on wisps of hay. Others twirled their hats and wrung them nervously. Joel felt as if he were going to be sick. Evans repeated his warning. Look to your feet, men. Someone tittered. Then the silence exploded as Evans roared, Get up! The sharp word of command galvanized the little horse into action. His muscles swelled and grew firm. He backed ever so slightly. He lowered his head, doubling down into the harness. He lunged, half falling to his knees, straining forward, throwing his whole weight into the collar. A hush closed around the gathering. It hung heavy and ominous. Suddenly the very earth seemed to shake. The chains were groaning, the log itself trembling as if it had come alive. It began to skid. It was moving. The stout man aboard laughed hysterically, then sobered, trying to balance himself, clutching on to the others. The log kept on moving. It was halfway to the mill. The horse's breath whistled in his lungs. His nostrils flared red in exertion. Sweat broke out on his body, lathering at the collar and traces. Joel, too, was drenched in sweat. He was struggling, straining, panting as if he were yoked alongside little Bub. Now the terrible silence again as the horse stood to catch its wind. There was no sound at all from the crowd. Overhead a robin, trying to get settled for the night, chirped instantly. Now Evans commanded again and again. The horse backed slightly, then snatched the log into motion. Again the log was sliding, sliding, sliding. This time it did not stop until it reached the sun. Still, none of the onlookers made a sound. The 3 men astride were silent as the log they sat on. Only the horse's breathing pierced the quiet. Then, as if a dike had opened, there was a torrent of noise. Everyone began shouting at once, Hooray for little Bub! Hooray for Evans! And Justin Morgan, hooray for that big little horse! Joel rushed over and threw his arms around Bub's neck. His whole body ached as if he had moved the log himself. It's over, you did it, Bub, you did it. He kept repeating, sobbing a little from exhaustion and relief. The horse lipped Joel's cheek and neck. He almost tried to say, It's all right, boy. Don't be taking it so hard. He was winded and leg-weary, but it was good to be near the boy again. It was good. He nickered softly. And that ends our chapter tonight. Oh, wow. How amazing, and how poor little Bub is working so hard. And I'm glad that Joel really got a chance to give him a good hug and a good rub, and Bub enjoyed that. Well, I wonder what's going to happen now, because he's not just the little horse anymore, is he? He's got a name for himself. Well, we'll see what happens. Everybody get a good night's sleep. Be safe, be kind, and I'll see you tomorrow night.